Are you in your last life? The 9 signs revealed by Edgar Cayce. Imagine a child, still very small, who looks into their grandmother's eyes and calmly says, "I've seen this place before. But it was a long time ago, when you were my daughter." Does it seem absurd? It happened. Cases like this have been accumulating around the world. Reports of people who feel a silent certainty, almost impossible to explain, that this life is not their first, and perhaps there won't be another after this one. But what if that feeling is not just intuition? And if you are truly living the last turn of the wheel, before reaching something that is beyond time, the body, and repetition? Edgar Cayce, known as the sleeping prophet, believed that the soul does not remain trapped forever in this cycle of births and deaths. According to him, there is indeed an endpoint, or rather, a point of liberation. An invisible line that, when crossed, dissolves the shackles of reincarnation. Now, what almost nobody knows, and what makes everything more fascinating, is that Cayce left clues, subtle signs, unusual behaviors, perceptions different from the ordinary. He said that when the soul is close to the end of its earthly cycle, certain things begin to change internally, even if everything on the outside seems the same. And the question is, are you noticing these changes in yourself? Maybe the reason why you feel different from the rest of the world. Why it seems like you've seen this movie before. Because your search seems more silent than ambitious. Maybe it's because you are among the few who are saying goodbye to the classroom of Earth. In the next few minutes, we will explore the 9 signs described in Cayce's readings that indicate you are living your last experience as a human. And get ready. Some of these signs are so profound that you might feel as if they are describing exactly what you have never been able to put into words. So take a deep breath. What you are about to hear may not change your life, but it may remind you of who you are, and always have been. Sign 1. You feel like a visitor in this world. There are people who, even living seemingly ordinary lives, carry within them a feeling that is difficult to explain. It's as if they were on the stage of life, but with the perspective of someone in the audience. You can work, raise children, make plans, laugh at social gatherings, and yet, at some point during the day or night, that silence emerges, whispering, "I don't fully belong here." It's not discouragement, it's not depression, it's a serene inner distance, as if you were just passing through, fulfilling something you can't always name. This is the first sign that you might be living your last incarnation. Edgar Cayce described this as a subtle awakening beyond the human game. For him, the soul that is approaching the conclusion of its earthly cycle begins to recognize, effortlessly, that the material world is a temporary representation, not the final reality. While many get lost in the pursuit of status, prestige, or possessions, you feel deeply that all of this is transient. Important? Maybe. But essential? No. You see the rules, understand the game, but you no longer feel like playing the same way. This feeling is not a lack of love for life. On the contrary, it is a silent reverence for everything that is, without clinging to any of it. It's as if you had already lived hundreds of roles: the warrior, the priest, the mother, the wanderer, the king, the beggar, and now, finally, you are ready to take off the costume and go home. If this resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Many souls who are at the end of the cycle share the same familiar strangeness. As if they had already been through everything, and now, they just observe the world with a mix of love, compassion, and farewell. The feeling of being a visitor does not mean that you are disconnected, but rather that you are already connecting with something great. Something beyond this physical plane, something that has always been within you, but that you have only just begun to remember. Signal number 2. You experience déjà vus that seem to transcend time. You enter a place for the first time, but swear you've been there before. A conversation that hasn't even started yet feels familiar. You know exactly what someone is about to say, and you get it word for word. Most people have experienced something like this at least once, but in your case, this is not rare, not superficial either. This is the second sign that indicates your soul may be bidding farewell to the earthly cycle. Intense, vivid, déjà vu's accompanied by knowledge you shouldn't have in this life. Edgar Cayce called this glimpses between veils. According to him, when the soul is close to the end of the wheel of incarnations, the boundaries between times begin to weaken. The past, the future, and the now begin to dance together. Cayce said that these experiences are like cracks in the linear illusion of time. They are not brain tricks. They are memories that do not belong to this version of you, but that still live within you. Maybe you have never learned to play an instrument, but your fingers move as if they knew. Maybe you have never visited a city, but you know its streets before walking on them. Or you feel a strange affinity with people you barely know, as if you were reuniting after millennia. You are accessing something greater, parallel expressions of your own consciousness, spread across multiple bodies, times, and spaces, all coexisting in one soul. Modern physics, curiously, is beginning to align with this view. Theories about non-linear time and simultaneous realities suggest that what we call past lives might not be in the past, but are happening now, on different planes. And you are starting to realize this. When déjà vus become frequent, profound, and emotionally charged, they cease to be mere coincidences. They become internal calls, reminders of the expanded self that you are rediscovering. If you have ever experienced these sensations and felt that there is something more behind them, trust that feeling. It's not your mind deceiving you. It's your soul whispering, you are remembering. Signal number 3. Death has ceased to be an enemy for many. Death is an unwanted end, a terrifying abyss. But what if, for you, it seems just a transition? Not a collapse, but a passage. Not an end, but a change of season. This is the third sign that Edgar Cayce described, the absence of fear in the face of death. If, upon hearing about the end of life, you do not despair, but feel a kind of peace, this may be more than emotional maturity. It could be ancestral wisdom manifesting itself. Maybe you can talk about death lightly, or maybe you feel that you have crossed this threshold before. Even if you don't remember when, you don't need religious guarantees to feel at peace. There is a silent certainty, like someone remembering something they didn't study, but have already lived. Edgar Cayce claimed that souls close to liberation carry subconscious records of multiple transitions, past deaths that were not traumas, but doors. These memories soften the survival instinct. They do not nullify the pain, nor disregard life, but reposition the focus. Instead of fearing the end, you begin to value the now with serenity. The urgency disappears. The attachment dissolves. You begin to live, not to prolong time, but to savor the moment. This internal change transforms everything around. Trivial discussions seem irrelevant. Haste loses its meaning. You begin to observe the world with gentler eyes, as if you have already understood that everything, even what seems tragic, is part of a larger flow. And here is the most beautiful detail. This vision does not come from the rational mind. It springs from the soul. It's like a warm breeze on a cold day. It doesn't impose itself. It just makes itself felt. And in that feeling, there is freedom. When the fear of death goes away, you stop being a hostage to time. You become whole in the present. And, as Cayce used to say, this is the true beginning of the end of fear and the beginning of the remembrance of what you truly are. Signal number 4. Life starts responding to you with synchronicity. We think of someone, and that person calls. You feel lost, and a sentence in an open book happens to bring the answer. You desire silence, and the city, suddenly, quiets around you. It's not magic. It's not a coincidence. It's synchronicity, and perhaps you are experiencing it with a frequency that others do not understand. This is the fourth sign revealed by Edgar Cayce to identify souls nearing the end of the earthly cycle. Reality begins to interact with your consciousness directly, almost as if the universe were conversing with you in real time. For most, the world is something external. something that happens to them. But for you, it starts to seem like the world happens along with you. According to Cayce, this phenomenon is neither a reward nor an illusion. It is a natural reflection of the soul awakening to its true role, that of co-author of reality. When the soul approaches the end of its incarnations, it no longer lives as a victim of circumstances, but as a partner in creation. And everything starts to flow differently. You think, and it materializes. You desire, and you find the way. You ask yourself, and the answer appears sometimes in a gesture, a song, or the whisper of a child. Modern science is beginning to suggest that consciousness not only observes the world, it influences the world. Quantum physics calls this the observer effect. Cayce has been saying this for decades. These synchronicities are not signs of power. They are reminders that you are aligned with something deeper, the invisible web that connects all beings, all things, all intentions. When you start to notice these improbable encounters happening with almost absurd frequency, don't doubt, you are being touched by the language of the universe. And the more you trust, the more life responds, not as a game of rewards, but as a natural echo of your inner vibration. The soul that is about to be freed from the cycle of reincarnations no longer needs to struggle to be heard. She listens, and is listened to with simplicity, with clarity, with reverence, and in this mutual listening between the being and the whole, life ceases to be random and becomes sacred. Signal number 5. The desire for more begins to fade for a good part of our lives. We are taught to always want something more. More money, more recognition, more love, more security. It's as if there were an invisible and endless ladder, and happiness was always on the next rung. But maybe you have started to feel the opposite. You look around and realize that, even without having everything, you already have enough. What used to drive you with urgency, goals, ambitions, status now seems distant. You still make plans, yes, but they are born from silence, not from need. You act, but without attachment to the outcome. This is the 5th sign that your soul may be closing its cycle of incarnations. The desire for external conquest begins to dissolve naturally. Edgar Cayce described this phenomenon as a clear symptom that the soul is freeing itself from the bonds of karma. What once seemed essential becomes merely a backdrop. The hunger for recognition gives way to the peace of simply existing. This can be confusing for others. They might ask you, but don't you want to grow in your career anymore? Or are you going to give up on your dreams? But what they don't see is that your dream has changed. You are not giving up, you are emptying yourself to return to what is essential. This state is not apathy, nor resignation, it's presence, it's freedom. It is the mature understanding that what you were seeking outside has always been within, and there is no effort in it. It's like when the water evaporates from a puddle under the sun, without noise, without conflict, without return. The need to prove something disappears. The emptiness that once demanded to be filled becomes space to breathe. According to Cayce, this absence of desire marks the end of the cycle, because the wheel of reincarnation turns, driven by wanting. When desire ceases, the wheel stops, and the soul is, at last, free to choose whether it wishes to continue or simply contemplate. And at this point, the action no longer comes from the "I need to," but from the "I am." You begin to live not out of obligation, nor in search, but as an expression of something that overflows. And this overflow is what the world really needs. Sign number 6. Reality starts to seem malleable. You ever had the strange feeling that the world around you is behaving like a dream? As if everything were real? Yes, but at the same time, not entirely fixed. Suddenly, you realize that things are not as solid as they seemed. The shapes, the names, the boundaries, everything seems more like a construction of perception than an absolute truth. And this is not a philosophical thought. It is a direct experience, a perception that happens within you. This is the 6th sign pointed out by Edgar Cayce. The soul, as it approaches the end of the incarnated journey, begins to realize that matter is not the beginning, it is the reflection. The external reality begins to seem like a mirror sensitive to your consciousness. You start to notice that your emotions influence events, that your intention alters the encounters, and that what seemed outside is, in some mysterious way, shaped by what happens inside. It's not about denying the world, but to look at it with different eyes. Cayce called this the veil thinning. It's when the soul begins to see the light behind the projection, like someone who finally understands that cinema is made of projected images, and that the screen was never the film. This understanding does not come as a shock. It comes as a memory. You start to observe more calmly. To detach from conflicts as if watching a play, knowing it's just a performance. Not that life loses its value, it actually becomes even more precious, because now you understand that all of this is a gift, not a prison. Science is also approaching this. Modern theories such as the holographic universe and conscious simulation suggest that the world may be an informational construction in multiple dimensions for the soul that is in its final incarnation. This is not new. It is an inner realization. When you feel that what exists outside is, in fact, a reflection of what vibrates inside, something profound changes. You stop reacting and start creating, stop seeking control, and start to inhabit the moment with reverence. The world then ceases to be a wall and reveals itself as a door. Signal number 7. You start to see yourself beyond your identity. At some point in your life, you introduced yourself like this: my name is, I am so many years old, I work with, I am the son of. But now, these definitions no longer seem complete. You still go by your name, you recognize your history, your biography, your traits, but you feel silently and clearly that you are something much greater than that. This is the 7th sign revealed by Edgar Cayce for souls that are closing their cycle of incarnations, the loosening of attachment to personal identity. Cayce called this access to the supraconscious state, a level of consciousness where the self ceases to be a rigid center and becomes a window to something universal. You still live your life with responsibility, but you are no longer limited to the character's narrative. Starts to realize that emotions come and go, thoughts come and go, even the roles father, mother, professional, child alternate, like clothes that dress the soul for a time. And then comes the question, if all this passes, who am I that observes all this happening? This question does not bring confusion. It brings freedom, because the answer is not in the words, but in the silence that exists before any thought. You become more aware of the presence that inhabits everything. You start to see the world with fewer filters. You see people with fewer judgments. You act with more lightness, because you are no longer defending a character. You're just being. And interestingly, this brings you even closer to compassion, empathy, and humility, because if you are not your form or your story, then the other is not either. The self expands and includes everything. This dissolution of identity is not loss, it is return. It's as if, after many carnivals with masks, you are ready to show the bare face of the soul, or rather, realizing that there is no face, just light flowing through forms. When this happens, you start living on two planes at the same time, in the world of matter, with its tasks and names, and in the world of the eternal, where everything is consciousness and expression, and you feel without a doubt that your true home, never a place. It has always been a state of being. Signal number 8. You feel empathy for everything, even for what others don't notice. Say you see an injured bird on the sidewalk and feel its pain as if it were your own. You watch someone being humiliated, and something contracts inside you even if you don't know them. Sometimes, you look at a cut-down tree and feel a grief you can't explain. Other times, when seeing the calm sea, you feel a longing that has no name. This is the 8th sign described by Edgar Cayce, an empathy that goes beyond the human, beyond the logical, a compassion that extends to everything that exists. You no longer see the world in rigid divisions. man and woman, right and wrong, me and the other. You begin to realize that everything is interconnected, that all forms are temporary expressions of a single essence. Cayce called this state cosmic consciousness. According to him, when the soul is close to final liberation, it begins to feel the whole within itself, and at that point, helping others ceases to be charity and becomes a natural gesture of self-recognition. You don't feel pity, you feel connection. You don't do good to be good, you do it because there is no more separation. This empathy can also extend to animals, plants, and even objects. You realize that there is an energy that pulses in everything, and this changes the way you walk through the world. You walk more lightly, speak more carefully, listen more attentively, and sometimes, this sensitivity makes you seem weird in the eyes of others. You cry watching scenes that no one else notices. You get emotional listening to the sound of the rain or touching the bark of an ancient tree. But this is not fragility, it's a memory. Reminder that the soul has no borders. Reminder that everything that breathes, vibrates, or moves carries a breath from the same origin. This universal empathy is a clear sign that you are leaving behind the illusion of separation and approaching the ultimate truth. That everything is one, and that one is you. In many forms, when you start to feel the pain and beauty of the world as if they were your own, it's because, on some deep level, you already remember that you were never separate from it. Sign number 9. Old patterns finally dissolve. A fortis slither was a time when certain fears controlled you. Repetitive situations seemed inevitable. Toxic relationships returned, even when you thought you had already learned. Old habits pulled you, like invisible chains. And no matter how hard you tried to change, it was like spinning inside a labyrinth. But now, something different started to happen. Without warning, that compulsion disappeared. That person who destabilized you no longer affects you. That limiting belief has lost its meaning. And the most curious thing, you didn't fight against it. You simply stopped identifying with it. This is the 9th sign according to Edgar Cayce, the spontaneous collapse of internal cycles that once seemed unbreakable. For Cayce, this was called karmic closure. When the soul is at the end of its incarnated journey, it has already extracted the essence of the main lessons, and no longer needs to repeat the tests. Imagine as if you had taken the same test dozens of times. In the last one, you already know the questions. You don't need to study anymore. Not even worry. You just hand in the sheet and move on. This is what happens when you start to notice that the patterns that used to hold you back have lost their emotional power. You still see the same challenges arise, but you no longer fall for them. You feel the anger rise, but it passes like a cloud. You notice the temptation, but it no longer controls you. You hear the criticism and simply breathe. It's not because you got cold. It's because you became free. According to Cayce, this does not mean perfection. Far from it. But it means a new relationship with imperfection. You stopped trying to control everything. You stopped fighting against yourself and began to observe, accept, integrate. What once held you captive now sets you free, and it's at this point that you realize it wasn't a forced transformation. It was a reminder of who you are without the burdens of the past. It's the moment when the circle closes, the soul stops spinning, and a new cycle, silent, subtle, and vast, begins to emerge. When the soul remembers who it is, if you identified with these 9 signs. It doesn't mean you are more evolved. It simply means that it has reached the point where the soul stops searching and starts remembering. Remember that there was never a separation, that the suffering had a purpose, that the journey had meaning, and that now, maybe it's time to walk with more lightness, more presence, more truth. After all, the end of the cycle is not the end of life. It is the beginning of a different way of living, a life without haste to arrive, without fear of leaving, a life that doesn't seek light, Because it has already understood that it is made of it, Edgar Cayce always avoided saying what happens after the last incarnation, maybe because it's not something that can be explained, just something that is lived. But if there's one thing he made clear, it's this: when the soul is liberated, it does not isolate itself. She returns to the world, not out of duty, but out of love, not to correct, but to witness, not to prove something, but to serve in silence. And now, maybe you are feeling it. You are here, but you no longer belong only to this place. You look around, and everything seems the same. But inside, you have already crossed the portal. Now tell me, which of these signs have you noticed in yourself? Which one touched you deeply, as if it were speaking directly to your essence? Share your experience in the comments. Your story could be the key that another soul needs to awaken. And if this video reminded you of something you already knew but had forgotten, then share it too. Maybe someone close is going through the same process and needs to know they are not alone. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of remembrance, presence, and expansion. Every week, new content about consciousness, spirituality, and what exists beyond the surface of reality. And remember to activate the bell, because the awakening can happen at any moment. And you will want to be here when that happens. May your journey be light. May your journey be light. And that, whatever cycle you are going through right now, you are fully in it.